Hey guys, we are joined today again with Debbie Mirza, who we had talked to probably a few months ago. So she has some updates. So I was chatting with her the other day and said, you should come back on and we could talk about what you have going on and let everybody know what new and updated things you have. So guys, welcome Debbie to the show. Debbie, welcome to the channel, to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you, Duane. I always enjoy talking to you. I'm doing really well. Thank you.
So since the last time we spoke, a few things have come up. One thing is actually, I just have to throw this out here. It's kind of interesting because I was like, you know what? I would really love to do a voiceover for an audiobook. So I reached out to Debbie and I said, hey, do you need anybody to do an audiobook? And I'll tell you what. So what's your latest release that you have coming out?
My audiobook.
Yeah, that was hilarious. That was awesome.
Yeah, I know. I appreciated the offer and you would have been great. I think I feel so close to this book. My heart is so wrapped up in it that I was like, okay, I want to be the one that
No, that's cool. It was perfect. I was just like, my thing was, I know some people don't like to do it or whatever. And it was something that I wanted to do. And I was like, hey, but yeah, guys, so she recorded an audiobook and it's out. It's out now. I think I have it. I just haven't listened to it yet. So where can you get that audiobook right now at?
So you can get that on audible.com or Amazon or iTunes. That's where it's available.
Ooh, and iTunes. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So I got it through Audible. So,
Okay.
like I said, it's sitting there. So I just have to, the next time I'm driving, which might be later today, I can listen to it. So how has the response on that been? Have you gotten any feedback on it?
It's been amazing. And honestly, the reviews have been incredible on Audible that I like cry every time
That's awesome.
I read them. Yeah, I'm so touched. I really wanted to. Well, first, I get bummed when I look up audiobooks and the author didn't do it because there's something about the author. No one can do it like them, And it is an incredibly challenging process, but I'm really glad I did it and I had to stop many times because I just start crying because I feel so much. Just like when I was writing it, I was continuously aware of the reader, reading this, and I know what this process is like, and I know how painful it is, and I know how unearthing it is. It just turns your world upside down.
Yeah.
So I did many, many, many retakes to get it right and to not be, sobbing my way through so you could actually hear the words. But I'm really excited for people to really hear and feel the heart behind it. I think it's going to be such a support. I think when you hear someone speaking these words, it makes it really digestible and you feel nurtured, as you're getting this information. That's a lot to get, especially when you're first discovering things you didn't know.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I really personally like audiobooks even better. And you're right. And when the author does it, they're so much better. So I'm glad you turned down my offer, to be honest. But it was a funny story just the way that happened. So so guys, definitely check that out. And yeah, I mean that's awesome. But before the show, we were talking about that you actually. And we might have mentioned it in the original podcast, but you have another book out that not as many people know about, right? I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, it's called The Safest Place Possible: Becoming Who You're Meant to Be. And really, it's a book about healing. Basically, once you've discovered this stuff and you've gotten all the information and you're starting to see clearly, but still confused, and you're exhausted and you're fearful about your future and you don't know how to heal from this, And so It's really part memoir, part self-help. I tell a lot of my own journey of healing and how I did that. I went through it was like a year of, I've got to focus on myself. I've got to change the way I treat myself. I've got to change the way I think about certain things, because I just couldn't function in life. Yeah. And I was really led to different exercises that changed how I relate to myself, how I deal with emotions. There's actually 21 exercises in the book. So it's a really helpful, practical guide to healing. There's also a workbook that you can get with it for like a few more dollars. That's really helpful if you're a person who wants to understand and also wants to heal and move forward, and you recognize, I was coaching a woman yesterday, in fact, and she said, what's going to happen from here? She's just discovering this. She's overwhelmed. She has young kids. What do I do? Do I leave him? Do I stay? She's just so overwhelmed. And I said, one thing you need to know is this is actually your hero's journey. And then we both cried. But that's the truth of it. Like if you're that person that really wants to heal and be free, this ultimately will be the making of you, and because this stuff starts in childhood, and then that sets us up perfectly for these type of people. And a lot of us are very empathic and nurturing and big-hearted people, that get taken advantage of, and we don't see it happening, especially, the more covert they are. So it's a really beautiful book. My book about covert narcissism is so needed and gives you that information you need, but it's a lot, it's a heavy topic. The safest place possible is kind of like a hug. It's a very nurturing, let me hold your hand and hold you through this process and give you exercises that will radically change the way you are with yourself. Because we hear a lot about self-love. What does that look like? So this book walks you through basically how to do that.
That's amazing. I just made a video the other day. I think it published the day before we recorded this, talking about, talking more about your next relationship also being an arc, bringing another one into it. And I talk a lot about what you're talking about. I didn't realize I'm going to have to check your book out, because that actually sounds perfect. That's what people need. They need something to help them kind of walk through that journey. I get your covert, passive aggressive narcissist book is kind of like, okay, this is what it is, right? It's the validation of the term and what you're dealing with and the process of it. But your other book, The Safest Place Possible, sounds phenomenal, just because you need that other half of that to get you through it. One of the books I recommend a lot is Rebuilding When Your Relationship Ends, and it's kind of a workbook thing. And it was really beneficial for me because it kind of walked through it. But I've been looking for another resource, right? Because everything, people connect to things differently, and there needs to be more than one, right? So I'll definitely have to check that out. Are you going to do an audiobook on your Safest Place Possible too, or not?
I really want to. I've had a lot of requests, a lot of YouTube comments. Please do the audio. So at some point I will definitely do that. I'd love to. That would be a great one to listen to too.
Yeah, I'll put a link to all your stuff in the show notes and in the description if I actually get this to YouTube this time. I'm definitely going to have to order that after we get done with this, because that is so needed, and just to have that walk through. I know we do a lot of this with our channels and your channel and your book and stuff, but I think a book also, it's another resource that people can use, and that's great. Now, when did that one come out? That came out, like a year before your other one?
Yeah, It was about a year before. In fact, I've often thought, a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, I'm thinking of starting a meetup group, a support group. How do you do this? And I thought that would actually be a great resource for a support group, if you're in one or if you want to start one, because you can get that little workbook and have it, and it's cheap. And so if you have a group, that would be a great thing to go through, 21 over a course of 21 weeks or something. You could go through each exercise and share your experience with everyone. I think that would be a great guide for people that are looking for a guide.
It's so amazing, the resources that are available. I think back on, 10, 15, 20 years ago, there were no resources. I mean, you would cry on your friend's shoulder, or, or typically, like, I mean, I guess for guys, it's kind of like your friends would say, suck it up. I mean, there wasn't a lot of understanding, and you just kind of had to muscle your way through it. And you can get some success that way, but that is such an incredibly painful way to traverse this nightmare. And then you're just at the mercy of, if you happen to guess correctly, to do the right things to help you. And if you guess wrong, you could end up in a whole nother toxic relationship.
Oh, it's true. Because so not all resources out there are helpful, and some can injure even more. I've talked to so many people that have had such damaging times with therapists or even support groups. I started going to support group, and the leader was a narcissist. It's like, wow. We ended up, booting him out, but that was, alarming, especially when you're in the most vulnerable part of your healing. So yeah, it's crucial what you choose. And like everything else that we're learning, listen to your body,
Yeah.
and trust that.
I'm glad you brought up the thing with the therapist, because I think it's an important thing. And neither one of us, everybody, is, saying therapy is bad or our therapists are wrong. But you need the right therapist. You need somebody who understands this, that you can relate to, that can actually help you. And unfortunately, a lot of therapists do not really understand narcissistic emotional abuse. And if they follow their normal modalities, or whatever the right word is, it can be more triggering and more damaging and not be helpful.
Yeah, because the thing to understand, and I should, Duane, before we keep going, something with QuickTime popped up. There's not enough available space to continue the file writing. Make room
So
by
just cancel
deleting.
that.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Ignore.
That's
okay.
Not good, but fine.
Okay. So this is minute, I don't know, whatever.
Don't worry about it. Well,
Okay.
I'll either leave it in or not. It'll be an Easter egg.
Okay, great.
Anyways, you were talking about therapists and stuff.
Okay, so with therapists, the thing to understand that they actually, my best friend's going through her master's degree right now to become a therapist.
Awesome.
So that's been validated talking to her. She said, "You're right, Debbie. We don't get any training on this. We get like 10 minutes on narcissism, but nothing about covert narcissism." So it's not, like you said, not like therapists are bad. They're incredibly good-hearted therapists, but they just haven't been trained. So it's really, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, I just want to hit a point that you said. In her schooling, you said 10 minutes, right? You said 10 minutes on narcissism. I mean, so even and nothing on covert, but even that, I mean, they're not being trained on this. And part of the problem, as I understand it from talking to Debbie, my girlfriend, who's in this process as well, it's a billing issue too. When they go down the list, there isn't like, okay, I'm dealing with narcissistic abuse, or I'm dealing with a cluster B. It's not billable. So it's not even something that they're looking at. It's like they have to go through everything else before they dive down into that. I hope that changes, but I mean, I think a lot of problems are associated with narcissistic abuse, effectively, and they're not hitting it enough to really help people. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I mean, it's just, I wanted to hit that because I think most of us think that somebody who goes through 6 years of school, because you have to, before you guys can be before someone can be a licensed therapist, they have to get their bachelor's and they have to go to get a master's program. So 6 years of school at the minimum. And then, at least in California, I don't know about other states, you have to get, it's like 3,000 hours of supervised hours before you can actually test to get your license to be, to hang your shingle up and say, I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work. And 10 minutes on narcissism? Yeah. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah. And I should say, I don't know if that's kind of me just making a point. I don't know if it's exactly 10 minutes, but she basically said they learn what's in the DSM-5. It used to be the DSM-4, now it's the DSM-5.
Right.
And just the basic things. Yeah. So that's, I talked to a woman who's been going to a therapist, and I hear this so often, that they focus on, well, let's focus on you. You don't want to blame other people. Let's talk about communication, and let's, which I understand. Oh,
something happened.
Your default microphone has changed to Yeti and now will be used.
Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, I heard it click. That was weird.
Yeah, that's weird.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, I'll say that again. The whole, so yeah, I don't know if it's exactly 10 minutes, but it's just the basics. And um, a lot of times, one woman went to 3 different therapists over 15 years when she was in this abusive relationship.
Ugh.
And they just worked. I said, "What did you talk about?" She said, "We just worked on communication. They thought I had issues. And if I just communicated better." So
Oh,
then once
man.
again, you're already being devalued and demeaned, and your
Right.
self image is this low. And to have then a therapist that you think, oh, this person knows more than me because they've been to all this schooling.
Right.
And then after 3 or 15 years, she went to a fourth therapist. And within 15 minutes, the therapist said, "You're in an abusive relationship. We need to get you out." So that's what saved her. So yeah, I'd interview therapists before you hire them and ask,
Absolutely.
yeah, what do you know about narcissism? What do you know about covert narcissism? A lot of my clients will bring my book into their therapist. Please read this.
That's actually
Just,
good though.
yeah, yeah. So,
I mean, and you know, I can. I mean, I think we talked about this before, but I'll just mention it again. When I learned about narcissistic personality disorder and that whole thing, I had mentioned it to my kids therapist, and because my therapist is the one who kind of basically said, "Hey, you might be dealing with this." No diagnosis. She wasn't diagnosing my ex. She was just saying, "Hey, from dealing with you for a couple of years and listen, your story." This seems like it could be a potential. And I know she did that to throw me a bone because I was just circling the toilet bowl. But when I went and I mentioned that, or, I was having a conversation with the kids therapist and something the ex had done, she's like, "Wow, why do you think she did it?" And I just went, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, covert narcissist, or, NPD, border, blah, 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 blah. And she just kind of looked at me like I grew a third head. And initially, I thought she was just being, I don't know, coy. But later she said, I took a course on narcissistic abuse and NPD. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, I was like, seriously? And yeah, so the good part is I mentioned it, and she was colleagues with my therapist. I'm like, look, talk to my therapist, whatever. And as a result of that, she went and took a workshop. I think it was a workshop or something that
yeah.
on it. And yeah, I just in a million years I would have never thought that a therapist wouldn't know about this issue. I figured it's like common knowledge that they would hold they would hold all the keys. I was really fortunate that my therapist was specialized in trauma, abuse, and PTSD. So she understood what was going on better and was able to help guide me to finally, start digging out of that hole. It's amazing. It's just amazing the lack of knowledge on this area.
Yeah. And it really is, I think, a newer thing. Like you were saying before, this is new information we're getting just over the last, especially a few years, but I would say the
Yeah.
last 10 years. This is just something that wasn't talked about for so long and not seen. And I do think it's on the rise too, So I'm really happy. I'm really happy my book's out there and so many resources are out there for people to help get clear.
Yeah, and your book's phenomenal. I think, and the fact that you have your coaching clients and whatnot, sharing it with their therapist, I think is a really good thing.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's kind of an awakening. It's weird because it seems like there's more people opening up their mind and seeing what's going on, and also people going down, like the dark path, I guess.
Hmm.
It's a really weird time. Do you notice that too?
I really do notice that. I love how you put it. It's true. It's like this, it feels like narcissism's getting worse. And at the same time, there are people waking up all over and waking up quite quickly, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really, I think, I think in many ways, the healers, the empaths, the kind-hearted people have been silenced for a long time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I feel a rising, a strengthening in people like us. That's really powerful. So yeah, I feel that too.
Yeah, it's an amazing time. And to come up on something else, I know another thing that you wanted to mention, talking about healing and talking about ways to deal with this, is you just completed and are releasing, I think today, on when this episode airs, a new course. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. This is my first online course I've ever done. I do have a couple in mind that I'm going to add to it in the next couple of months. But this is a healing and clarity online course. It's a 6-week course that you can find on my website, which is just my name, debbiemirza.com. And what I did with this, I was trying to think of the needs, when someone is just finding this out and they're wanting clarity and they're wanting healing. So I did it's really self-paced. So you can do it over 6 weeks, or you can choose your own timeline, whatever works for you. And I have basically 6 exercises you do that target 3 parts of your journey. So the first couple have to do with clarity, because at first it's like, what is the truth? What's the truth about this person? What's even the truth about me? I don't even know myself anymore. I feel like I've completely lost who I am. I'm believing all these things I've heard from this toxic person. So the first 2 exercises deal with that, helping you get clear on the narcissist and on you. And then the next few deal with self-love. And how do you rebuild? Because, the truth is, we get into these relationships because this behavior was modeled usually in childhood, so we have gotten beliefs about our own worth. And so we unconsciously don't believe we deserve any better. So that's part of the healing, is to be the love that you need and really heal that relationship with yourself. And so that's what the next few exercises deal with. And then the final one makes me so happy, because when you have left people like this, you're filled with fear and anxiety about your future, oftentimes. And also money can be an issue for people, and that's really fearful and lots of anxiety there. And we've been taught, whether this was a parent or a spouse or a partner, we've been so inundated with the message that you can't do it without me, So that brings up fear. So the final exercise is looking towards your future. And it's a really great exercise to do to help rediscover what lights you up, what brings you joy, and to help with that. So yeah, that's the course. I'm really excited about it. It's affordable. It's less than half of what I charge for coaching. So you get a lot in a 6-week course. So
that is great. And just going back to what we were talking about earlier, again, that video I was talking about I just made, that's another thing that I was talking about is, you have to learn to love yourself. Until you can basically self-validate your own emotions and your own self-worth, if you're putting that on someone else, or you're basically saying, okay, this other person, you are the one who's going to validate my self-worth, it's dangerous, right? You have to be able to do that on your own, because if you can't, then somebody who's abusive, you can't create good boundaries if you don't love yourself, right? It's like you have to be able to say, okay, this is a deal breaker. This is unacceptable. I'm not going to make excuses for it. I'm not going, you may not be disordered or not, but this is not appropriate. And I'm okay if I'm by myself, it's like, allow people into your life because you want them there, but you don't need them there. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And, oftentimes we can hear self-love and think like, oh, well, that's not going to do much, because it just doesn't sound like that, like strong and powerful.
It is though.
But it is. The truth of it is, the more you love yourself, you get used to that treatment. And then it's easier to see false love. When someone starts treating you in a way that's not right, you notice it more, because now you've gotten used to, over time, wait, I know what love feels like now. I know what it should look like. And that's not what this feels like. And I have now learned that I'm worthy of this and I'm really liking this,
Yeah.
instead of this false toxic love. So it's powerful. I think it's one of the most powerful things we can do.
That is amazing. That's great. I'm looking forward to checking your course out because that, you know, I mean, all this stuff is empowering to people. I mean, it's like you said. I mean, you say, oh, it's all about self-love, right? I mean, it can seem so
Right.
woo, and it can seem. I mean, I can see how somebody in the middle of this can be just like, well, that's crap. But it's like, here's the thing that's really I find amazing, and I'm curious to hear what you think on this. Is I think most of the answers on this, on everything we're dealing with, are incredibly simple. It's like once you peel off all the garbage and all the extra weight and all the childhood trauma and whatever it is, and you just let everything calm down. The answers are simple. It's, and I know when I get the whole thing, self-love sounds weird, right? It's like, well, of course I love myself. Well, no, most people don't, right? Most people
Yeah.
don't think that, okay, I'm not worthy. I gotta please other people, or I have to do these other things. And it's like, there's a balance. I mean, it's not saying that, everything, it's just me, me, me. I mean, it's not that, but it is such a powerful concept. And once you really embrace it, and it takes time. I mean, it's not one of those, it's a simple concept, but it's not simple to do. That's why, I mean, you have a 6-week course on it
Mm-hmm.
because it takes time to reprogram
Mm-hmm.
basically your mind so that you understand it. I mean, it's just phenomenal. I mean, I can't wait to hear what your clients, or what do you call it whenever someone buys a course, your course takers,
Yeah.
get to use it and start giving feedback on it. And I'll put links to that in the show notes and the description as well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited for people to have that too. And like you said, it's developing habits. And that's why I did a 6-week thing with
Yeah.
each, because I want to establish habits, help
Yeah.
people establish habits, because that's what's life changing. Because like you said, the concepts are simple, self-love, but it
Yeah.
does take effort and reprogramming, because we really have been conditioned and programmed to think certain ways about ourselves, about the world, and we see ourselves in the world through these paradigms that we were raised with, through what we've experienced in these relationships. And so yeah, it takes time, and that was the reason for it. It's a course I suppose you could do in 6 days, but to really get the benefit out of it, to do that exercise every day for a week is going to
Yeah.
change your life.
It's yeah, and I just to dovetail on that. I mean, and I have a playlist for helping people in the beginning of this, but two of the main concepts that I promote is what I call absolute thinking, which kind of helps you validate what you're doing. But I talk about the fact that it takes time. It takes a month or so for it to really click, and that's what you're talking about. I mean, and I think the idea of a course is even better than just a YouTube video because it's more structured. There's
Mhm.
a path to follow and exercise. I mean, it's more like, okay, so I can take, and I'm sure this is I'm sure this is the way it works. I'm not completely sure, so I'll ask a question. But I imagine I could take that module and then come back the next day or 3 days later and then run through it again,
Mhm.
and just use it to try to remind myself what's going on. And your point about that repetition and that time to do it is so critical. And it takes
Mhm.
time to do that to really start to see results.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And a lot of these things I literally do every day. I've
Yeah.
incorporated these practices because I've seen how life-changing it is.
Yeah.
I've dramatically changed. And, honestly, self-love will take years off your life. I've had people literally look 10 years younger after doing these
Well,
things for, a while, because it changes your cells. It changes everything.
well, when you're under constant stress, that weighs down on you. I mean, and
Mhm.
I can feel that in my own self whenever I'm tense or stressed about something. It has a cumulative negative effect. But whenever you
Mhm.
can take an objective view at what's going on, I mean, like in my situation, and I've talked about this on my channel, but I was told, New Year's Eve that I may have to move, and 4 or 5 years ago, I would have been an emotional wreck because of this.
Mhm.
And although there's uncertainty in what's going to happen, I feel, a little bit of anxiety because of the uncertainty. But for the most part, I'm like, okay, all right, stuff happens. Maybe this is just, maybe this is the universe telling me I need to make a change, something like that.
Right.
And I'm keeping an open mind to it. So the stress isn't as bad. And it's, it really, it's an amazing shift to where I know a short period of time ago, it would have been completely different. And I can even, I've gotten feedback from people who are like, you seem different in your videos and stuff. I mean, it's one of those things that it just keeps growing, right? I mean, it's like you can feel good today, and then 6 months later, you go like, oh wow, I'm even better. I mean, it's one of those things that it just, you agree with, I'm sure you felt the same way, right?
Completely. Yeah. I even look at my own YouTube videos and I look at the older ones versus now. It's like, wow, yeah, I've changed.
Yeah.
It's still helpful information, but I can just see it in myself. Yeah. It's fascinating.
And I think that the good part about this for the folks watching and or listening is you can be in a mode. I mean, both of us were at the beginning stages of this, were in modes where it was catastrophic, emotionally devastating. I mean, and probably both of us were just shell shocked thinking, what's the future going to be, And,
oh yeah.
And now look at us, right? I mean, you have clients that are, you're seeing that with. I have subscribers that I've seen it with, but I mean, it's like where you are today is not indicative or not where you're going to be, a year from now, 6 months from now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you said that because we've been through all stages and we've definitely, and I talk about it in Safest Place Possible. I think that's where I think people will feel comforted by that too, because I talk very openly about where I was at, during those really rough times and my thoughts and what I did with my life. And so, and to be here now, like Duane is saying, to give you hope, you won't always be in this place, you will, it's amazing how your life, if you do the work, on yourself. And if you really, I tell clients, like, I know you're going to be okay because you want to heal. For a lot of people, this is something they choose to kind of swim in the cesspool for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's just going to keep you miserable. It's going to keep your health not good, So if you're someone who wants to heal, who really wants to learn from this, to get strong, to love yourself, to do the work to get there, your life is going to radically change. And that's when it will become your hero's journey.
And then one thing I just want to dovetail with that is you can, and most people do for a while, crawl into that cesspool, like you said, and stay in that anger, bitter validation mode. And it's a choice, right? I mean, people can choose to stay there forever. I hope to God they don't, because that's sad. But, you're going to go through that phase, but it's our choice to say, okay, enough is enough. I don't want to live this way anymore. Like you said, I want to heal. I want a different life. I don't want to be attached to this anymore. And it feels like it's not possible. Like, or even whenever you get to that realization, maybe you went through the same thing as I know I did, where you're like, I can't do this anymore, but you don't know how. See, the problem is, back for me, there wasn't a clear path on how to get out of it, right? I didn't have your healing and clarity, after narcissistic abuse course, and your book wasn't available. And maybe there were some other ones out there, but I couldn't find them. So, I'm just sitting like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want out. I want to do something. I don't want to feel this way, but I couldn't figure out how to get there. I was using therapy. when I was going to therapy, I was asking my therapist, it's like, give me homework, tell me books to read, tell me things, 1 week, twice a week or once every other week, isn't enough. And, but even with that, even with me wanting to get out of it, it was really tough. I think that with stuff like what you put out is tremendous, because it helps, it gives you that foundation to like, okay, follow this path. Follow the guide Debbie, and she will get you to the other side, right? It's phenomenal.
Road,
yeah, exactly. I don't know, was your journey the same? Was it similar for you?
Oh yeah. I wrote the book because I couldn't find the book I needed. When, my journey was like, someone had mentioned in my life, this person sounds like a narcissist. And I was like, what? that's the last thing I would ever call this person. He's
Yeah.
the nicest person. Everybody loves him, and she's like, yeah, that's what they're like. I was like, what?
Wait, what? Yeah.
So what do you mean that's what they're like? Because when we think narcissist, we think of these
I'm so
grandiose.
great. I am like a god among
They're-
mortals, right? That type of
exactly,
thing. Yeah.
exactly. And that wasn't the person I was with. And so I did a lot of study on narcissism, and most things out there at that time was the grandiose picture.
Right.
And it was like, well, that's not him. But there were some elements where it's like, okay, well, I do feel rage from him. Okay, that's true.
Yeah.
I feel this underlying rage. Okay, I do see this. I do see that. So I, like you, I went to therapists and coaches and read and just trying to like dig that, like gathering pieces to this really incredibly confusing puzzle.
Yeah.
At the same time, feeling like maybe this really is me. Maybe I'm just over dramatizing this. Maybe I'm just trying to find fault, and maybe there's really are lots of things wrong with me,
Yeah.
which we all
I can
do.
relate to that. Yeah, we all do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And finally, one woman who was a coach told me, yours sounds like a covert passive aggressive narcissist, and they're the most difficult to recognize and diagnose. And I was like, what? Like, those are the words. I was like, please tell me more. So, yeah. So it was, so that was the beginning of I had the words,
Yeah.
So then it still was really difficult to find information. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why after years of my own, healing journey, there were different things that led up to this idea for the book, but I felt very fierce. I thought, okay, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to make it incredibly helpful. I'm going to make it the book that I needed that would have helped so much if it had been around. So that's why I wrote it.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I remember when I was talking about my therapist mentioning that, my initial response when she said, it sounds like your ex might have, undiagnosed NPD. And I remember initially when she said that, I'm like, whatever. Okay. All right. What is it? Let me write it down. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Another, diagnosis. And I went home and I Googled narcissistic personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not the in your face grandioso type. It's more covert. But I mean, once I started looking at the information, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And then I
Right.
searched on, divorcing a narcissist, and it's like, oh, it'll be, co-parenting. No, it's just the laundry list of how they're going to respond. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah. I mean, like, yes, 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 yes. And I think one of the things I wanted to hit, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think two things. I think one, narcissism is now so overused that it's lost its. I don't think when you throw it out, it's used so much. I don't think people really understand what we're saying. Is one. So yeah. And then the second part about this is I think that we get so trapped or so caught into what am I dealing with? What is the person? Okay, I look at NPD and it's like you were talking about, it's like, well, they don't really fit these marks, so BPD, well, they don't fit these marks. And in my opinion, and I'd love to hear your view on this, is it doesn't matter. If you're dealing with a toxic person, they don't have to be, diagnosable with it. It's like they're toxic. If they're not good for you, they're not good for you, and you're not going to be able to change them. I see people get so wrapped up, and I get comments constantly on YouTube videos where it's like, my ex-wife does this, or my girlfriend, or my ex-husband does this. Is he a narcissist? And it's like, does it really matter if you've gotten to the point that you're on a YouTube channel searching for answers? Something is wrong in that relationship.
Yeah, true. I think it matters at the beginning, I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm not a fan of labels in general, but in this case, because it's so confusing, it was so helpful to have the label and then everything lined up. It was like, oh, okay. And I think it's helpful at the beginning because it helps validate what you've been feeling the whole time, and it helps things put into place. But I agree with what you're saying that at some point, because then since that relationship, I've had a couple others where it's like, wait, I don't think it's narcissism, maybe,
Yeah.
borderline, maybe that, I don't know, but I've now, like you're saying, come to a place, it's like, okay, in many ways, I don't need to know. All I need to know is this completely drained me.
Yeah.
And that alone is something to go, all right, I've got to take care of myself here.
Yeah, let me clarify. I'm not saying that that's not important, and you're absolutely right. I'm glad you said that because somebody could take it out of context what I meant. But yeah, in the beginning, you absolutely have to lock in what it is because your mind's not going to process it correctly without it. That's and I think what's really awesome is like with your book is you can read that and quickly discern what you're dealing with, and then move on, right? I mean, that's the key is you figure it out. You don't dwell on it, and then you figure out how to fix yourself. You figure out how to make your life better because it's two-part, right? I mean, it's like the validation part is important, and that kind of gives you that foundation to say, okay, I realize there's been these influences in my life that have been negative. And then once you have that figured out, then you can start making that pivot to working on yourself and working on your self-love and all that stuff. And it's like a rocket. I mean, once you start working on that, it's just like, things just start going better. Maybe not completely straight up. There might be a little dips and pivots every once in a while, but it seems like once you hit that, it's like, you start picking up momentum and things start going and improving faster.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for the information out there because I was talking to someone earlier about this. We were taught what evil looks like. We weren't taught about this form of evil,
Yeah, that's a good
and
point.
so we didn't have a heads up, and so I think it's really important that people, and I'm really glad my book's out there and other books are out there that are explaining this is what this form of evil looks like. It
Yeah.
doesn't look like a serial killer. It doesn't look like someone yelling and screaming at you or hitting at you, which those are all horrific too, but we need to know, it's helpful to know the different forms.
Oh, absolutely. And this stuff is I know it's I know it's kind of a simplified term, but it's evil. It is evil. I mean,
It
it's
really
based
is.
in negative, nasty behavior and consuming as much positive energy or whatever from another person. It is just nasty.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
anyways, I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. Is there anything else you want to hit before we wrap this up?
I think that's good. It was a great conversation. I know it's going to be really helpful for people. And I'm so grateful to you once again, Duane, because at the beginning, when I was searching, not all YouTube channels and videos are helpful, and some made it even more confusing to me. But there were a few that I felt like these are genuine people that I can really learn from, and yours was one. And I even put you in my
Thanks.
book because of that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, because you can feel it, and I'm sure your listeners and viewers pick that up. You can feel that you're a genuine person. And Duane is, we have conversations before and after these talks too, and he's the exact same as you see him on his videos. So it's I so appreciate everything that you do.
Awesome. Thank you on that. Well, I'll put links to everything in the show notes and in the video description. So guys, please go check out Debbie's stuff. It's a tremendous resource. She also has a YouTube channel. So subscribe to her to get her updates and everything. And thanks again, Debbie. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Duane.